Okay, hello Minecrafters, infotechers, and people who love to feed the beast. And I've got a beast being fed here today. So I have just produced a bunch of steam, and I have just fired up the large steam turbine. Now, the large steam turbine is a pretty complicated beast. You're going to want to follow the book on putting it together, but once you have it put together, there's going to be a few things to consider. One, how much power is going to come out. If you get that wrong, blammo. You have to deal with some outputs that come out. In this case, distilled water. Distilled water has uses in certain recipes, so it's worth sticking a barrel on there to save it. So sacrifice one of your favorite barrels, and I'm sure you can go make a new one. This thing itself, there's all kinds of different turbines. There's a whole galaxy. This is a small turbine. You can make a larger turbine. The larger turbines, I think, are a little bit better. But this one here, optimal steam flow, 8,000 liters per second. And to do that, I'm actually I filled this thing up ahead of time. This boiler, as I have found here, this large bronze boiler, does not seem to be producing enough steam to keep up with the demand for this beast. So I actually have to produce the steam ahead of time. I just emptied a barrel of creosote because that stuff was just getting in my hair. And so anyway, what I've done is I've set that up with a high voltage pump, which is going to pump up to 10,000 liters per second into a steel pipe that can take about 9,200 liters per second. That should be more than enough to get me, to the 8,000 liters per second I care about here. So 9,200 liters per second, 8,000 liters optimal flow. I imagine that's probably working out just fine. So that is producing power here. You can see it's sucking this thing dry at an absolutely crazy rate. And if I come over here, you can see that I've produced some power. I actually did an earlier run with a little bit of coal. So went to make this video, but decided to remake it because I got a little off track because of some strange problems I had. I did want to cover a few things, though. Like I said, maintenance, you already know about that. How to put it together, it's all in the book. There are a few things. You can actually have more than one of these connected here if you want. So you could have two of these tanks and then a steam boiler on each side running it if you wanted to feed it double the steam. I guess when you get the bigger turbines in there, you're probably going to have to do that. But or you're going to have a really, really super pump to pump this stuff in there. So the pumps, pretty easy. You can just look them up here, hover over them, and see what their output is. The next one up is going to be giving you 40,000. That is either a comma or it's a period decimal point. Maybe they're in Europe or Canada or something. Wherever they use decimal. Do they use the decimal? They use decimal point instead of commas in Canada? I think they just use the comma, like the Americans do. But in Europe, they use the decimal point. So that could be 40,960. When you get to the IV pump, look at the amount they're pumping out is just ridiculous. I don't even know if you have a pipe that can handle that much gas. And then they just get crazier from there. Maybe there's a pipe out there somewhere that can handle this kind of volume, but if you're producing that much steam per second, you're doing a lot better than I am. So, all right, looks like this guy is done. It actually shut itself off. It'll turn itself on again when steam comes in. A thing about these guys is they don't hit peak power right away. So when you start them up, they'll start producing first they'll produce nothing, then they'll start producing a trickle of power, and then that will increase up to an eventual peak. And what that peak actually ends up being is going to actually depend on your rotor. So you got a small rotor, you got a large rotor, you got a medium, let me see, turbine. As you can see, there's actually a variety of these. There's a small, there's the turbine itself, there's large, and then there's huge. So if you want to go with the huge one, you can do that. And as you can see, the optimal steam flow is a little different. Well, it depends on what you're building here. I built mine out of cobalt, but there's a whole galaxy of materials you can use, and you're just going to have to pick through and try to decide what works best for you based on what you can build. I mean, sure, whatever the heck this is made out of. Sure, the titanium one is going to do good, but if you don't know, if you haven't the foggiest on how to make titanium or any of the materials, I imagine that crap's out in space. Then you're probably not going to be able to make this thing. Turbine efficiency 110%, so you're actually beating the odds there. That's kind of weird. Anyway, I don't expect magic maybe to do that for you, but maybe titanium has its own special physics. But they do have durability. I don't know this for myself because I've never been brave enough to try it, but I have heard rumors that if you run one of these things, one of these turbine blades down to 0, that the machine will actually explode, as if the turbine came apart inside it. I don't know if that's true or not, but that is a fair warning here. You do have to be careful of what kind of power. So now this turbine blade, this thing here, it doesn't tell me how much EU it's producing. So I don't really have an idea of how much EU is coming out of this thing. This power, this dynamo hatch here is HV rated, but it can produce less power than HV. Less than HV power can come out of that thing easy. It could only be putting out, say, 250 EU over T, for example, instead of 512. If it crosses the 512, if it puts out more than 512, if it puts out 513, you're going to have an explosion that will destroy your turbine and probably everything around it. And you could have a chain reaction. I got a little fun story here if you want to hear it. You can either stop here or you can listen. So I had a large gas turbine that I made, and I decided to put a bigger rotor inside. And I decided that I was going to use blue steel, because blue steel looked like it produced a very nice rotor for gas flow. And so I took that thing and I stuck it in there, and I did some calculations, just a small piece of printer paper out, and ran some calculations, and I thought it was going to produce around 1,900 EU over T. So, that seemed like, so I thought an EV dynamo hash would be enough. So I plugged the turbine in, turned on the gas, and saw power come out. So I went up to check my Lapotron crystal array. I had 9 of those, and one of those really large, it was 16. I had 16 of them. And the largest kind of EV, or sorry, not EV. Yeah, those do take EV. The largest EV, extreme voltage pack thing you can build, battery buffer that you can build. So I check it, power's running into it. I'm very happy. I stand back for about another 30 seconds to admire my work, when all of a sudden all hell breaks loose. The turbine exploded. That detonated several other machines, which detonated the Lapotronic pack, all 16 of them, which produced a spectacular explosion. All of my machines, which I had in a row, kind of like I do here, that base layout was different. The turbines were in the basement. The explosion actually extended through the ceiling and set off the machines, causing a tidal wave of explosions that ripped all the way through and destroyed all of my machines. Ripped a chunk out of my blast furnace. I mean, the base was completely in ruins. It was just a big smoking hole. I mean, the ceiling was blown off. There was a gaping hole all the way down into the ground. I mean, it was just unbelievable. And as it turned out, my calculations were wrong. That thing had produced just a little bit more than the 2,048 EU over T that dynamo hatch can accept, and the thing blew itself to pieces. If you're absolutely unsure if it can handle it, you have some options: / backup, so you can back up your system, or spin up a creative game and cheat yourself enough parts and tools to put the thing together. It's actually a little more involved. Unfortunately, some of the tools you have to cheat up the parts, build the tools, and then put the machine together. But you can still make yourself a little side game for that in creative mode. Spin up whatever parts you need, assemble it, and do some experimentation with it. That way, if something blows up, you're not gonna cry a river. You're just gonna put everything back together. You're just gonna pick up the pieces, hack up some new parts, and try again with some different, with a different dynamo hatch and see if it can handle it. And So that's the forewarning I would give with this guy. It is complicated. You're not always sure what you're going to get out of it here. Optimal steam flow, 12,000 liters per second. Is that gonna equate to more power? I don't know. It doesn't really tell you in the book. The book doesn't really explain. Oops, that is not the right book. That is for the boiler. That's for the pyrolyze. That's for the oil cracking unit. Brass furnace, imposing compressor, vacuum freezer. Oh, I had it in my inventory all along. Okay, so as you can see, there's no real large steam turbine. Runs with large high pressure turbine. There's a superheated steam. So it does talk a little about the cousins of this steam turbine and what they run with. So there's a high pressure version that runs with superheated steam, which I can't make yet. There's a gas turbine, which I kind of told you in my story, where I blew my base to hell. And then luckily I'd had a backup run, but I didn't run one right before I did it. I ended up the backup had been about half an hour before. I lost half an hour of work basically. So yeah, do a backup before you fire it up just to be safe. You know, if all hell breaks loose, you can roll back if you feel like it. Large plasma turbine. You know, a fusion reactor is so far above me right now, it's not even funny. Turbine rotors, very great in size material, contribute to efficiency, durability, optimal flow modifiers to running of the turbine. And there's absolutely no math in this book, nothing to explain what the math on this thing is. So I'm probably you'd have to go and do some research and figure out what the math is on this stupid thing. But just keep in mind, different rotors are going to give you different different amounts of power. And if you calculate it wrong, like I did in my last game, you're going to end up losing some time. You're going to end up losing a lot of stuff, and maybe reloading and maybe having to reload from a backup, and maybe losing some progress as a result. That's all I've really got for this thing. So you know, I will see if I can find the math, and maybe I'll add it to the description. If I can't, then we'll just leave it at that, and I guess we'll just have to do trial and error to figure it out. All right, that's all I've got. Thank you for watching.